Chapter 439, The Generous Prince. The scene before his eyes reminded Klein of the romance story which Talem Dumont had told him. His noble friend had fallen in love with a commoner woman and was insistent on marrying her. However, being in the top circle of the aristocracy, the marriage was absolutely prohibited. Talem had been vexed over this matter, and he had even considered the prospect of hiring a murderer, but in the end, he managed to persuade the woman to leave his friend on her own accord. Could the main character of this story be Edisac Augustus? The situation is very consistent in all aspects. As a prince, marrying a commoner is practically treason in this era. Since the founding of Loan, the spouse of a direct descendant of the Augustus family could only be a noblewoman. From what I've just heard, Edisac has brought that commoner woman back, and he has even grounded her as punishment. True love. In a split second, the story of a tyrannical prince and a pitiful frail white flower took shape in Klein's mind. He looked into the distance, enjoying the midwinter scenery. That's not what it really looks like. When spring comes and the grass sprouts, you'll see a golf course of the highest quality. Prince Edisac dismissed the maid, raised his whip, and pointed around. Golf? Klein asked, simultaneously knowing the answer to his question. Prince Edisac motioned his guards and attendants away, leaving the old butler and Klein to follow him by his side. He strolled on the desolate plains, chuckled, and said, "Yes, golf. This is a truly aristocratic sport that even the owners of most magazines and newspapers have a hard time getting involved in. Although I don't like Roselle, I have to admit that the fantasy-like ideas he had have given us a world with plenty of fun. If you can figure out the truth to Talem's death, this place will always be open to you." It was indeed Roselle. Klein let out a light breath. Seeing that he didn't respond, Prince Edisac continued to lament. There is much to learn from Roselle in every way, but his attitude towards feelings makes me sick. Of course, this is the common nature and style of most of the Inti's aristocrats, and it's also the source of their infatuation with luxury and debauchery in their lives. Looking ahead at the slow stream, Edisac said in a mature tone that was beyond his years, 99% of people are not geniuses like Roselle. In order to succeed and establish a great enterprise, one must first understand what they really want, and for that, they must be willing to pay the price and never turn back while persisting all the way. As he said this, his tone became slow as he laughed at himself and said, "Before this year, I had always thought that I liked the daughter of Earl Hall very much. She has perfect looks, an elegant demeanor, a rich fortune, a distinguished family, and a very powerful father. She's someone that no prince can find fault with, but now I understand that what I'm really attracted to is something that I yearn to have even in my dreams. It's a unique temperament and profound soul born from experience." Hess, I'm not saying that Miss Hall is lacking in temperament, but that wasn't what I want, admire, or like. Your Highness, your tone, attitude, and expression are now almost identical to Talem just before he died. Don't suddenly die in front of me, even if I were to jump into the tussock. River, there's no way for me to prove my innocence. Moreover, hearing much of this makes it easier for me to be silenced. Do you want to tie me to your chariot? Klein felt a little afraid for some baffling reason. He cleared his throat and took the initiative to change the subject. Your Highness, with your status and identity, you will certainly not lack subordinates. There are many people who are willing to investigate Talem's death for you, so why do you need me? Edisac shook his head and chuckled. As a prince, I have as much power as the little freedom I have. There are many things I can't let the people around me do, as there are too many eyes on me. You're a great detective with brains, and you have a good relationship with Talem. You were there at the time, so I don't think there's anyone better suited than you. Don't worry, if there really is a problem, then I can definitely guarantee your safety. Such a promise is like toilet paper in the bathroom. Klein couldn't help but silently lampoon. With Prince Edisac already saying this much, he felt that there was little chance of him leaving Red Rose Manor if he refused again. He could only sigh and say, "Actually, I'm as angry as you are about Talem's death, but reality has kept me calm." Edisac smiled. "What can I do for you?" Talem's hair, either his flesh and blood, plus something he carried around with him. Klein made the request. "Okay, then I'll have these delivered to your house. Edisac agreed at once and then asked curiously, "That's all?" Klein didn't stand on ceremony. "I will only know what kind of help I need when I have a preliminary lead. Your Highness, it's best that you give me a way to communicate with you. A private detective who frequently visits this manor would definitely arouse suspicion." Edisac nodded and said as if he was prepared, "I'll have someone secretly rent the house next door to you, 13 Minsk Street. When you need to make contact, write a letter to your neighbor about visiting and put it in the mailbox. As for the reward, you should know that I'm not a stingy person, even if it ends in failure. As long as you contribute and take the risk, you will still receive the corresponding income. If you do find out the truth, I'll give you a reward sufficient for your retirement." This prince does things really swiftly and decisively. Retirement, that would be at least £3,000. Klein secretly sighed. "All right, may the spirit of Talon be at peace in the kingdom of storm and lightning." He bowed. Edisac nodded slightly and instructed his elderly butler, "Take Detective Moriarty out and back to Minsk Street. Why don't you keep me for lunch? Aren't you treating your guest in a little too arrogant a manner? Of course, it probably has to do with it being a long time before noon." Klein silently teased him. He followed the old butler all the way out to the entrance of the manor and retrieved the gun holster, revolver, and the bullets. At 15 Minsk Street, Klein stood at the oriel window and watched the carriage with the royal coat of arms drive away. Sherlock Moriarty might die at any moment if the investigations really goes deeper. Who knows, someone might be watching me right now. Not for now, since I haven't made any moves yet. Klein frowned and stood still. At this moment, he was extremely eager to advance to Faceless. "I can't afford to wait for the machinery hivemind's exploration of the Ammon family's tomb. I have to continue trying to buy the human-skinned shadow characteristic via other channels. After all, no one knows how long the machinery hivemind's preparations will take. What if it exceeds a month or even half a year? That's not impossible. They can first send people to guard the entrance and slowly gather the corresponding information so as to be certain that nothing goes wrong. It's not a bad strategy, but that's not something that I can afford to wait for." As thoughts raced through Klein's mind, he made his decision. At 2:45 p.m., he brought his newspaper into the bathroom and actively prepared for this week's tarot gathering. 3 o'clock sharp. A deep red illusory radiance rose as Audrey Hall looked around in a good mood. Last night, she had finally received the Sequence 7 Psychiatrist Potion formula she had been dreaming of. Her emotions were still a mix of excitement, agitation, and serenity. Furthermore, the psychology alchemists hadn't immediately asked her to make any contributions, claiming that it was an advance. They had full confidence in Miss Audrey's outstanding ability to repay them. No new members. Audrey stood up and gazed at the very end of the long bronze table. She raised the corners of her skirt and bowed. "Good afternoon, Mr. Fool Tilda, good afternoon." Her light and cheerful voice broke the unchanging silence above the fog, and it allowed Klein, who had been feeling a little depressed, to temporarily be rid of the troubles that the outside world had on him. He nodded slightly and responded to the members' greetings. When she sat down again, Audrey brought the other members into view and created a dynamic scene with the previous observations. When bowing, Mr. Hanged Man silently sized up Mr. Fool with inconspicuous curiosity. Then, he looked towards Mr. World in anticipation. In other words, with him having a deep relationship with the Church of Storms, he knows about the details of Duke Negan's assassination and is aware of the appearance of hero bandit Black Emperor. He has the desire to investigate the hidden truth behind this matter. There appears to be an outcome regarding the werewolf Beyonder characteristic, which Mr. World had entrusted him to sell, and he has also probably found the human-skinned shadow characteristics or the deep-sea Naga's hair. The son's emotions are very stable and relaxed. This means that he believes that the City of Silver surveillance on him has been lifted. What did he rely on to make this judgment? Has he been reallocated to the so-called exploratory teams? Fours is a little depressed despite feeling relaxed. She passed the Abraham family members test and has become his student, but she was forced to accept something that was disadvantageous to her. Mr. World is as cold and deep as ever. Perhaps when I reach sequence 7 or 6, I'll be able to grasp his emotional changes and thoughts. Well, the Fool is still as mysterious, powerful, and unfathomable. A series of thoughts flashed through Audrey's mind. She looked at the figure shrouded in the gray fog and said, "Honorable Mr. Fool, I have obtained 3 new pages of Roselle's diary." It was a copy she had requested from the psychology alchemists. However, as she had only mentioned it last night, Escalante only had the time to give her 3 pages in such short notice. "What kind of reward do you want?" Klein asked with a smile. Audrey replied sincerely, "Can you just treat it as the reward for answering my previous question?" As she said this, she had an inexplicable feeling of flaunting herself. "Mr. Hanged Man and the rest of you still don't know the existence of the Twilight Hermit Order. Phew, how envious. I wonder what problem did Miss Justice seek guidance for in private. I'll write to teacher when I get back, and I'll ask him if he has Roselle's diary, no, to the outside world notebook." Fours immediately had the desire and motivation. Under the Hanged Man's suspicious gaze, Klein nodded without any care. "Sure." Audrey quickly produced 3 pages of tawny diary entries and passed them on to Mr. Fool. Klein took them and read them. On the first page it wrote, 13th January, contact with Mr. Door stabilized. This is a Chinese proverb, which involves jumping into the Yellow River.